by saying that Darius addresses the issue of, so I had this conversation with a friend recently, the issue of when does a young black man going from being a cute kid to being threatening or dangerous or uncomfortable for people of other races. And we see Darius play through all of these versions. And as someone who has not only helped raise a biracial child, but as someone who has friends who are raising biracial children, that question of when does the child go from being this really cute kid to being a threat. And I thought that the book really played well into the character of Darius being that child who has to ask those questions and deal with the consequences of the answers to those questions. I really liked him. I liked him, one, because he was a complete gentleman, and I also liked him because at a certain level, as we spoke about, Zuri is very pushy and judgmental, and he doesn't fully give into that. He pushes back, and he questions that, and I love that about him. I love the fact that he never fully gave in, and I love that about him completely. And I understood both sides. I understand Zuri being a child of a Caribbean American family living in America with British roots, and then also being that Brooklyn girl dreaming of something bigger, and then meeting this young man who has lived kind of both of those sides, and he doesn't give in to Zuri's feeling of being, oh, well, better than him. And I love that about him. I love that he pushed back, because Zuri is a young lady who needs someone who pushes back. She does not need the guy who gives in. And so I love Darius. He is a great character.
Great. I agree. I thought that Zuri was very, very rude to him for no reason, just because he existed, and she assumed that his family had money. And she was just so terrible. I was like, oh, my God, what's wrong with this girl? He has done absolutely nothing but say hello. She was like, I don't like you from the jump. So I thought that he was very mature in how he handled her, because he could have just been very nasty to her. But he kind of was intrigued by her, and he liked her. So he was just like, let me just sit back and let her do what she does, and maybe later on I can win her over. So I liked his character a lot. And he actually later in the book becomes kind of a hero for her, and so in a kind of a way.
Yeah.
But I don't want to spoil that for the reader. But that brings me to the Warren guy that we see. So Warren is the handsome dude from around the way, but he gets to go to private school where Darius and Ainsley go. So
talk about
Warren,
throwing a grenade into the room, Lisa.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about Warren and how he and Zuri got together?
Okay. So I want to tell you right off the bat, and I know this is so bad to say, I didn't like Warren when I met him. I didn't.
I liked him when I met him.
I did not like Warren when I met him. And I'll tell you why. So Warren is a neighborhood kid that Zuri grew up with. So she's known him all her life. And he's he's the smart hood kid, right? And so he gets a scholarship to go to a private school that's outside of Bushwick. And the Darcy kids happen to go to that school too. So our hero, anti-hero, they know each other. And I think the part that I struggled with through this book, so I shouldn't just say it was Warren, I think it was just the issue as a whole, and maybe it's because it's so real, is that, people of color who have different socioeconomic backgrounds not liking each other because of that. Because there was a lot of that in this book. Okay, you have kids from different backgrounds, all really smart, intelligent kids. Okay, so I'll just say that they're all smart. Very smart. Her sisters, Warren is, as well as our hero, the Darcy kids. but they have different opportunities, because their families, have different socioeconomic backgrounds. And once again, you have, Michelle used the term code switching, but you have this kid, Warren, who is one thing to the hood because he can run, he can hang with the boys on the corner, right? He can go to the bodega. He can fit in both worlds. And then you have Darius, who, is still learning some of the social cues for that community, but at the same time, because he is on a different socioeconomic level, like he doesn't necessarily have to fit in with them, right? Like, I don't need you the same way. And he kind of shows some of that. Like when Zuri confronts him about how he acted when he was just trying to get a pencil. He was trying to get a pencil in the neighborhood, y'all, and he had to go to the store to get it. And so, the hood boys, the Bushwick boys were there, and he didn't really acknowledge them. And she was like, you don't do that. Like, that's like breaking a code. But in some ways, he said, but I don't have to, right? Because they don't have the exact same code. And in some ways, he says, and we don't have to. So Warren was an interesting character to me because if anybody was straddling two worlds, it was him. It was him who was straddling two worlds. Zuri was very much rooted in her Brooklyn Bushwick pride. And Darius was a kid that came from Upper Manhattan who had relocated to Bushwick. But, there's a certain vibe in Upper Manhattan that they brought to Bushwick, as evidenced by a cocktail party, which we'll have to talk about that cocktail party and Mom with her chuck support.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So we definitely got to talk about the cocktail party.
Yes, we do. We have to talk about the cocktail party. But yeah, so Warren to me was that kid that really had a foot in both worlds, and was truly manipulating both worlds.
I'm gonna challenge that. I don't necessarily believe in the manipulating both words. I can argue that he was surviving them.
Okay.
And they both required survival techniques.
We'll see if that happened to some little 13-year-old you knew, if you feel the same way. But okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with my opinion with Warren, I kind of got creepy vibes from him when he first approached Zuri, because she was there with Darius, and he saw clearly that she was there with him, but he didn't care. And then out of his own mouth, he says, and I quote, "I'm from around here, and every dude from Cypress Hills to the Marcy Projects know about the Bonita sisters with the fat asses. You don't even know me, and you're going to say that? That's the first thing you say to me? No, sir.
Nope.
You're cut off."
I understand that too.
Yeah.
He's creepy. That was your first clue that he was a little creep.
Actually, it's not. I hate to admit this. It's not.
He would not have gotten any play from me talking about my asset in that manner. Michelle, I know you from Brooklyn, so is that a different code? Is there something else that they do out there?
Michelle, no, good. Well, if Warren approached her right now today and said something about her asset, she'd go the other way. But go ahead.
As a woman of a certain age, I deserve the right. But I mean to say that, as a girl growing up in Brooklyn, there's certain levels of conversation that's understood. If there's a house full of kids, everybody knows that house. And I think Sierra will back me up in saying she knows that. Everybody knows that house. And there's a certain reputation that belongs to every house in a certain neighborhood. I've been the difference, Darius, and for Z, in terms of dealing with the character of Warren, I remember we were the kids that were in a neighborhood and went to a certain school. like all the kids in my neighborhood went to private school or religious school. So I understand the concept of everyone knowing the kids in that neighborhood. Now, in Warren's defense, I will say one thing about him that I like. The first time that he takes Zuri out on a date, and she thanks him for walking her to her door, and she says, "Thank you for walking me to my door." And this is after her not complaint, I don't want to use that term, her constantly reminding him that this is not a date. But at the same time, he walks her to the door, and at the end of the evening, he's like, "That's all you want?" And she's like, pretty much he says, like, "Yeah, that's what I want." And he says, "Well, girl, you need to raise your standards." And I heard that 100%. I like the fact that he said that. Now, the fact that he turns out to be not exactly what we know him to be. Do you guys remember that movie years ago? There was a movie with Sean Connery where he played this elusive author that this young black student in a private school goes to find. Mm-hmm. And that's the vibes I got from Warren. So I didn't get bad vibes from him right away because I got the vibes of that kid, that really smart kid. That was the vibe I got from him first. He did not quite deliver on that, but that was the vibe I got from him before. Yeah.
He was disrespectful.
Right.
You just could not step to me like that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then I understand the concept of having a reputation. All the guys in the neighborhood probably did talk about them like that. But you don't step to the girl and say it. There's a way to approach a female.
I'll say that. I wasn't surprised by it, and I guess Brooklyn girls have a certain level of tact where it wasn't automatically taken offense to. Yeah. You understood where you were discussing.
Yeah. Okay. And what I will say, just to tag along with what Michelle was saying, is that sometimes in the hood, and it happens other places too, but in particular in the hood, growing up, girls and young boys pay a lot of attention to physical development. A lot of attention to physical development. I grew up in the hood too,
but nobody could step to me like that.
I know, I understand that, but just to tie in with what Michelle said, so I'm going back to this cocktail party. So y'all should know, in the book, just like in Jane Austen's story, there's a cocktail party that the Darcys threw, and they invited the neighborhood, including the Benitez family. So, so at the cocktail party, usually you don't bring aluminum foil pans full of food, but Dory's mama was kind enough to do that. So we got to love Mama, right? But with that, not only did she bring the food, I appreciate you for the pork chunks, but what she mentioned was, look at my girls' figures. Like, I know how to feed them. Like, I'm putting that fat where it's supposed to be. So to speak. So these girls obviously have mature figures for their age, because their ages are, she has twin girls. We have Layla and Kayla, who are 13. We have Marisol, who's in between. I think she's like 15.
She's like 15.
Yes, and then you have our heroine, Zuri, and then you have the oldest sister, Janae, who I believe is 19.
She's 18 or 19, something like that.
Okay. So, so obviously all of her girls, since the mom drew attention to it, like, they have figures that are desirable for the men who would probably be looking at them, men or boys. So, and that's not unusual, that, our kids are sexualized at a very early age, good, bad, or indifferent. It's just something that, that's attention is put on that, in the hood. Yeah. While other little 13-year-olds may still be bows and pigtails, we're trying to, dress and look like our older sisters and aunts and moms, and sometimes it's encouraged.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm going to argue about Mama Benitez, not necessarily sexualizing her girls as much as what she thought young women, it's that whole concept of what makes a girl marriable future. It wasn't that she wasn't pimping them out to men older than them, but she was, I guess, understanding a different version. Like, there's a woman who